was Thanksgiving, and the three of us were desperate to escape the family drama. So when Jake found this cabin somewhere in the old-growth forest online for dirt cheap, we jumped on it. We arrived Thursday morning and decided to hike before settling in for the night. The trail behind the cabin circled through dense woods. Ben led the way with his GPS, Jake complained about his cell service, and I took photos of the scenery. Everything was going all right. About an hour in, Ben stopped and said that he saw someone standing behind a big oak, maybe 50 yards off the trail. He claimed the dude was naked, except for a skirt made out of dried leaves, and maybe the lad was following us. But when Jake and I looked where he pointed, we couldn't see a thing. We laughed it off as one of Ben's filthy fantasies and kept moving. But about 10 minutes in, things started to get weird. We kept finding dead animal carcasses scattered on the trail. We saw a raccoon with its chest cavity open and the organs missing. A deer carcass hung upside down from a low branch, completely stripped of meat. Its bones were so clean, I could swear someone had licked them. It was filthy and disgusting, but nothing prepared us for the small bird skeletons hanging from the trees by thin threads, spinning slowly in the wind. They formed a pattern, like props for Halloween decoration. Jake said it screamed one of those cults crap he'd read on the dark web, about groups who venture out to remote forests to perform ceremonies. I suggested we head back, but Ben pointed out we were closer to the cabin than the car. We agreed to spend the night as planned and leave first thing in the morning. The trail eventually opened up to a clearing where the cabin sat. It was small and weathered, but sturdy enough. We unloaded our supplies, made dinner, and cracked open some beers. Soon, the animals and birds were out of our minds. By midnight, we were pretty wasted. Jake and Ben had passed out on the couch, watching the football highlights on Jake's phone, while I took the bunk bed. My eyes were already half closed when Ben got up and stumbled toward the door, whistling some made-up song about needing to pee. The outhouse was about 30 feet from the cabin, a rickety wooden structure with no roof. I'd used it earlier and hated it. It felt too open and exposed, sitting there with nothing but night sky above. I was drifting back to sleep when I heard Ben's scream. Jake and I both jolted awake and ran outside. The outhouse door was hanging open. Ben was lying unconscious on the ground. We dragged him back into the cabin and laid him on the couch. He was breathing but wouldn't wake up. Jake slapped his face lightly, called his name, and sprinkled some water. After a few minutes, Ben's eyes snapped open. He let out another scream and scrambled into the corner, shaking like a 4-year-old. For a while, he couldn't get any words out, just gasped and kept pointing towards the door. Finally, he managed to tell us what happened. He said he'd gone out to the outhouse and was just standing there, looking up at the stars while he finished. Then, as he went to flush, something wet dropped on his shoulder. At first, he thought it was sap, maybe some bird crap or rain starting up. But when he looked up again, he saw a bald-headed face with bright eyes staring down at him. It looked like the naked man from the trail, and he was taller than the outhouse ceiling, so tall that his neck was almost hunched, looming over the empty roof, staring down at Ben. He was drooling and panting like a dog. Ben said the man had razor-sharp teeth and was constantly salivating, staring at him like he was food. He screamed, and that's all he remembered before blacking out. Jake said Ben must have spooked himself, maybe saw a bear or a large owl, and his drunk brain filled in the rest. But Ben seemed pretty sober to me. The fear in his eyes was real. We locked every door and window, pushed furniture against the entrance, and turned on every light in the cabin. Suddenly, coyotes started howling from multiple directions at once. Like many of them were out there and they were circling the cabin. We sat in the living room with our backs to each other, watching the windows. Jake had grabbed a kitchen knife. I held a fireplace poker. Ben was clutching his steel water bottle. The howling continued for hours. And around 3 a.m, it stopped, only to be replaced by a woman's shrills and wails for help. Yes, something was calling for help. The voice felt too desperate to get us out of the cabin, but we didn't move. It continued for maybe 10 minutes. Then it stopped. We sat in silence until dawn started creeping through the windows. As soon as it was bright enough to see, we grabbed our stuff and ran to the car. We didn't bother packing properly, just threw everything in the trunk and got the hell out. The drive back was mostly silent. But as we passed the trailhead where we started hiking, I looked into the woods, and there, standing behind the same oak tree Ben had pointed at the day before, I saw a man. He was impossibly tall and almost naked, except for a skirt made out of dried leaves. His face was hidden behind the branches and shadows, but his red eyes shone through. And as we drove away, I could tell he was smiling. I didn't mention it to Jake or Ben. We never went back to those woods. Ben had to see a therapist for months afterward. But sometimes, late at night when I'm alone, I hear the howling, and I remember the way that thing looked at me from the trees with nothing but hunger in its eyes.